You're welcome to International Business News. I am Lekon Onobanjo. And we start by telling you that the ugliest year ever for U.S. corporate bond investors is expected to get uglier, and they only have the Federal Reserve to blame. With the central bank raising interest rates at the fastest pace in decades, nearly three-quarters of those who responded to the MLIV poll survey said that tighter monetary policy is the biggest risk facing the corporate debt market. Just 27% were more concerned that corporate bankruptcies will pile up over the next 6 months. The dollar extended its best rally against the yen since mid-June on Monday, buoyed by higher treasury yields after blockbuster U.S. jobs data lifted expectations for more aggressive Federal Reserve policy tightening. The greenback was last 0.31% higher than 135.42 yen and earlier rose to 135.585 yen, its highest since July 28, after surging 1.57% in the previous session, its biggest single-day gain since June 17. The dollar index, which measures the currency against six counterparts, stood at 106.77 from a Friday peak of 106.93, also the strongest since July 28. And elsewhere, Argentina's economy minister Sergio Massa has announced the shakeup of the country's energy leadership, removing top allies of Vice President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner as the government prepares to cut electricity subsidies. Flavia Royon will take over as Energy Secretary, replacing Kirchner's ally Dario Martinez. Santiago Yanotti, Federico Banal, and Cecilia Garibotti will be Royon's undersecretaries. Britain has launched an investigation under new national security rules into a sale of a 60% stake in National Grid's gas transmission and metering business to a consortium led by Australia's Macquarie. The National Grid agreed to sell the unit for an enterprise value of about £9.6 billion, that's about $12.7 billion in March. And finally, crude oil shook off an early slump at the week's open to trade steady as investors weighed prospects for demand ahead of a barrage of intelligence from leading energy players on the market outlook. WTI was little changed, about $89 a barrel, after initially slumping more than 1%. Investors have backed away from commodities in recent months as slowing growth feeds concern that energy usage will drop, including for gasoline, and that helped WTI to sink by almost 10% last week. And that's it on International Business News. The Ping Express saga is in the news, and that will be our next conversation. That will be after this break. Stay with us.
Two Nigerian co-founders of the fintech business Ping Express US LLC were sentenced to 27 months in prison by U.S. courts in Texas for failing to keep up sufficient anti-money laundering procedures. Now, the U.S. Department of Justice claimed in a statement that during the time period under review, customers used the Ping Express technology platform to send more than $167 million overseas, including $160 million to Nigeria, allegedly without sufficiently obtaining information about the customers or the sources or uses of the funds involved in the transactions. Joining me now is Anslem Oshionebo. He's the former CEO of Ping Express, and he joins us. Anslem, welcome to Business Edge. Let's get into some of the issues first that you've had, and then bring us up to speed on where the current state of things are. So the U.S. Department of Justice, accused your company of failing to maintain anti-money laundering controls on the platform, and the DOJ says this allowed customers to remit large sums of illegally derived funds to Nigeria. So how many of the transactions that Ping Express has done since it's been in business fell under this situation that the DOJ has pointed out?
Well, thanks very much for your question, but let's just put it in perspective. We had over 80,000 customers. And out of 80,000 customers during this whole investigations, 3 were indicted. Only 1 was found guilty of to have committed fraud into his bank account before using the Ping Express like the same way he did for before going to the grocery store or Walmart to make a payment to buy something. So yes, we're looking at one. So that tells you it's significantly less than 1% of the entire 80,000 people that use the technology platform.
So even if it is a 1% situation of those who have been attempted to use Ping Express illegally, it does raise some questions, and that's about your anti-money laundering control. So there is an example that the DOJ cites, and they cite an instance in which one customer remitted more than $80,000 in a single month, which they say is 17 times more than the limits that customers are meant to have on your platform. So take us through what your anti-money laundering control measures should have been, or are, or were, in whatever regard time frame you consider, given what the investigation has now pointed out.
Well, I think the point is this. We had policies and we had training limits and limits that were put in place internally for to train our employees, to make sure that the employees and the entire team understood that there's a internal risk assessment process that we had in place. Those are the limits that has been referred to, not the policy. And if you look at the policy, it clearly said that those limits are for training purposes only. And the fact that they were there is just to be able to make sure that we manage our risk. One is that when we have a customer who intends to send more than above certain amounts, additional documentation is required. There's going to be ID cards, there's going to be utility bill, there's going to be bank statements, all processed to verify that the funds came from the customer's bank account. In this very instance, we got over 30 different documents from this customer to demonstrate that the funds got from his bank account, to demonstrate that he had this fund. He even wrote an affidavit that's on record, which I can share with anybody. He wrote an affidavit to say that the funds were not illegally derived from fraudulent sources. So the question is, we verified all the information we could verify, and based on the information we had, there's nothing I have, there's no tools that I know that exist today that would allow me, a third party, to be able to verify how someone received funds into his bank account. Because he got the money into his bank account, he sent proof of his company registration, he sent evidence that he owned the money, he wrote an affidavit. So we verified all that level of information on this very customer you're talking about, this particular one in question, that allowed him to be able to send additional information. It's not that he was exempted from not verifying those information. Those information are on record, and there are multiple instances over the years that he's been a customer. It wasn't a customer that just woke up one day and said, hey, I'm sending XYZ. He's been with the company for several years. And each time he tries to send money, someone's always asking him additional questions. Someone's always verifying, where did you get this money from? Someone's always asking him, is it coming from your bank account? We have tools to verify it. So I don't know what else we could have done, but that's basically what we did from that very customer.
So I have to ask, because it seems safe to say that part of the Department of Justice's grouse with Ping Express is that maybe you didn't know your customers as well as you thought, this whole KYC situation. So let me ask, do you think that Ping Express should have been responsible for knowing where money is coming from, where it's going, what it's being used from? Even though you say you have as much information as you legally should have had, it seems that they're asking for you to have gone just a bit further. Do you think that really is Ping Express's responsibility and possibly liability?
Well, I think you've asked a very good question. The responsibility we have is limited to us what we could get. However, I'll put it out there, and the real question is this. If someone stole money and gives to Mr. B, who puts in his bank account, and Mr. B goes to the store or goes to another company to buy something, the question you'll be asking is, who's responsible to know that the funds was initially stolen? Is it his bank, or is it the merchant that he bought the items from? Definitely it's going to be the bank and not the merchant. But to the best of our knowledge, the bank himself, who sent the stolen funds to his account, did nothing. His bank who received the stolen funds did nothing. We are just a merchant. And we did as much as we could do based on the tools and resources we had. What I mean, tools and resources, we verified everything we need to do. So the question I ask is, who's responsible? Who has the liability? His bank, or the bank that the funds were stolen from, or the merchant? And it's obvious to everybody that sees that, look, The merchant is just a third party, and he would do the best he could do at that point in time, which is what we could do based on the resources we had.
Anslem, do you think that Ping Express, and by extension you and your co-founder, are scapegoats in this situation? Because there are numerous reports, whether it's the Panama Papers or it's this investigation, that shows how illicit funds move around the world, implicating a number of Western financial institutions. There was a 2020 report by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists that looked at the former vice president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it mentioned Western Union and also implicated MoneyGram as well. But your case seems to be getting a different sort of reaction from the U.S. government. So do you think you're scapegoats in this situation?
Well, I think the point is the DOJ has a right to prosecute who they want to prosecute, and this is left for them. But the reality is this. In these cases of Western Union, you talked about MoneyGram, you talked about, these were cash transactions, so they could not even trace it. And we all know that in this case, none of them, neither the company, neither the executives, or anyone was prosecuted on this matter. We all know it's clear, it's out there, everyone knows that. In our case, we had the customers from their own bank accounts, so there was electronic record. There was no means to a plan to hide the information because you could easily trace the name to those individuals. Yes, this has happened. We're different, and we've been treated differently, which evidence shows and information shows out there. Just like every other company, yes, we're a small company. I'm not saying we were 100% perfect. We made errors some places, but when you look at from the sheer volume perspective, when you look at from what we did and the level of effort and due to the end of this. And like I said the other day, we made significant groundbreaking differences in the industry. We lowered the cost of remittance to Nigerians and most immigrants, where the cost went from like 10% to approximately 1 or 2% globally. We did everything that we could do at that point in time. So yes, are we being treated differently? Yes, we could know. We have so many banks in the world that have material weaknesses in their internal control, not significant deficiencies, material weaknesses in their internal controls. None at this point in time have been charged for a criminal offense as of today. But we, yes, like I said, we're a small company. Yes, we might not done certain things, like we may have not stopped this customer. Maybe I say, oh, yeah, you send the money from your bank account. It's large, even though I don't know where you got the money from. There's no proof you wrote an affidavit. Maybe I could have stopped it. Maybe that's what we could have done. I don't know. But the point is, when you look at it globally and look at it consistently with others, these banks that have material weaknesses, the information is there in public, that had significant deficiencies, where none has been prosecuted, but we have been prosecuted. That tells you the difference.
So one of the things that the Department of Justice says you failed to do, and it's in the plea papers, is that Ping Express admitted that it failed to file a single report over a 3-year period in terms of the anti-money laundering procedures, even though there was significant amounts of suspicious customer activity. So can you clarify that? Is the DOJ, did you file at all? Did you not file? And if you did not file, as it seems, 3 years, suspicious customer activity, why not file such a critical report?
Well, the first I want to say, did we file? The answer is yes. We filed reports on customers or potential users. I won't call them as customers. Potential users who tried to defraud Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones' bank account and tried to use it. In those cases, we stopped them and we filed the report. Now, for other cases where maybe we could not have enough information, we filed those reports in batches, not single. And the question is between why did you file in batches between individual report? We did file a report. I just want to clarify that. Now, the other question is, should we? This is where the question that keeps thinking in my head. Should we have filed report on anybody that sent money above, let's say, 5,000, 10,000, irrespective whether we had any information? Just, okay, you sent in 5,000. It comes from a bank account, but I'm going to pretend and say it's suspicious. That's the problem that we have. That's what the expectation is. That, yes, it's your money. I can see it coming from your bank account, but because of the fact I don't have any tools to know how you got the money, I should just file the report because you sent above a certain amount. That's the questions that we have in debate. But if we file, the answer is yes. We filed in batches. The debate is whether it was filed singly or not in batches.
So from a lot of your answers, I find that obviously you're very unhappy with the way things have gone, but you and your co-founder also pleaded guilty. And there is the question of whether or not, as company founders, you should have been held liable for internal control failures of your company. And if you do dispute some of the findings of the DOJ and the process in which you were accused and, of course, investigated and all of that, then why plead guilty? Why accept some kind of, is it a plea deal at this point in time, 27 months that we're expecting to hear from a judge later on to see what the sentencing and the situation will actually be? But why plead guilty?
Well, like, sentencing is done. The point is very simple. First, you should understand that aside from the mental stress, this has been over 3 years of disruption from family activities, disruption from our personal activities and personal life. The question, it gets to this point, is after spending over $500,000 in legal fees, in consultant fees, and in all that has been going on, have a point that you say, look, it's time for you to move on to other things. At this point, we felt we did everything we needed to do from a calculated risk perspective, and we felt what was best important to allow us to be able to attend to our family matters, to be able to focus on other things, but just to move on. Because we spent 3 years trying to share information, 3 years trying to demonstrate that we've done everything, and we needed someone else to tell me what we could have done differently, what other companies have done differently, and we could see where we could improve upon. Yes, like I said, maybe yes, we were not perfect. I'm not saying we were perfect. But the other part you ask yourself is, which other company has been charged criminally? Which executives have been charged criminally? As of today, we've not really seen that as a good example, where executives have been charged or the company has been charged. But like I said, we spent so much money. We had very, very limited resources, and we were going against unlimited resources. So it was just time for us to be able to move on, forge ahead, and that we can focus on our families and our lives.
All right, Anslem, before I let you go, I want to ask, do you think there are lessons for particularly Nigerian founders or African founders of fintechs that operate on an international space? There have been a number of think pieces about the situation that Ping Express finds itself in. But directly from you now, do you think other fintech owners and co-founders and founders that are of African descent or operating within the African space, trying to connect the diaspora and the continent, are there lessons in your situation for them?
Of course, there are lessons for everybody, there are lessons for everybody. Lessons include sometimes your common sense may not necessarily mean common. You just have to do certain things that are not common. Like someone sending money to a bank account, you could call it suspicious, even though there are no proof to make it suspicious. Just move on. The other little things I could do. But the biggest concern I have, which I'd raised before, is I call on the Nigerian government. We need to make life easy for people to be able to send money and pay money to pay school fees, pay for the feeding of their family, be able to make a purchase internationally. If that is easy, illicit dollar, fake dollar derived from fraud will not be useful, will not be used by people. And it will not be useful such that it's going to get people in trouble. Today, I know, I can tell you, it's on the internet. There are more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, or multiple Nigerians that are currently in jail directly because of the fact that they gave someone naira and they got dollar from somebody. Unfortunately, that dollar was derived from illegal sources. And unfortunately, definition of conspiracy does not necessarily mean you know or planned with someone to defraud. It just means you received that money. And that's a question you need to ask yourself. We need to make life simple. From a founder's perspective, I'll encourage people to keep your heads high, keep doing what you need to do, be honest, transparent, but try as much as possible to make sure that you follow the relevant rules. And at times, common sense doesn't matter.
All right, so we'll leave the conversation at that. Anslem Oshionebo, thank you so much for joining me. We'll be following closely to see how things develop with Ping Express, yourself and your co-founder. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
All right. And it is one that I said has spurred a lot of conversation, particularly in the fintech space, with African founders who are trying to find ways around the remittance and money, sending money home issue that many Africans encounter when they're in the diaspora and they want to send home for investment or for their families. And this seems to be a cautionary tale that many are paying attention to. You're watching Business Edge. Money Monday is coming up right now. I'm handing you over to Lekan Onabanjo as he and the guests look at short-term investments for protection against recession, because that seems to be where we're headed.